In the winter of 1983, a bone-chilling cold engulfed Granley Gardens, London, a place where darkness never seemed to fully retreat from its narrow alleys. But it wasn't the cold that sent shivers down the spines of the residents, it was the stench, putrid, metallic, and overwhelming, rising from the sewers. For days, whispers spread about the clogged drainage system, the blackened water bubbling up, carrying something unnatural. On that fateful day, a plumber arrived, tools in hand, irritated by what he assumed was just another tedious job. But as he bent down and peered into the gaping, black maw of the drain, he didn't see the usual waste, he saw flesh. Human flesh. Jagged white bones, crimson scraps caught in the pipes, as if someone had hastily stuffed them in. The rancid stench hit him like a hammer, making his stomach churn and his hands tremble as he fumbled for his phone to call the police. The authorities arrived immediately. Flashlights illuminated the sewer, revealing a sight straight out of a nightmare. These weren't just random remains, there were hands, feet, grotesquely torn apart body parts jammed into the narrow pipes. Following the trail of horror, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat, they traced it back to the top-floor apartment of an aging building. The tenant? Dennis Nilsen. A seemingly ordinary man working at the job center, someone no one had ever suspected. At that moment, he was nowhere to be found, leaving the entire street suspended in eerie silence, bracing for what was to come. Detective Peter J., the lead investigator, would later recall in a trembling voice on a true crime documentary. As I stood there, outside the apartment, the cold wind howling past, I could feel something monstrous waiting for us inside. We knew there was a killer, but we couldn't yet fathom what kind of creature we were about to face. Then, Nilsen appeared. His footsteps were slow, his expression disturbingly calm. He gazed at the officers with an unsettling lack of concern, almost amused, before casually inviting them in with a faint, meaningless smile. But the moment Jay stepped over the threshold, the air thickened, saturated with the sickening scent of death. The detective wasted no time. "Where's the rest of the bodies?" he demanded. Nilsen's response was as chilling as the winter wind outside. "Over there, in plastic bags. In the next room." Jay opened a cupboard. His hands trembled as they brushed against two massive, black trash bags, bloated, heavy, as if they contained all the horrors of hell itself. He ripped one open. Inside lay dismembered remains, grotesquely butchered. Two severed heads, their empty eyes staring into nothingness. The officers recoiled, their gasps and choked cries mixing with the eerie sound of Nilsen's soft chuckle, a sound that didn't belong to a human being. In an instant, he was handcuffed, yet his vacant, emotionless gaze suggested this was far from over. In a matter of hours, what had started as a routine plumbing call had transformed Granley Gardens into the scene of one of the most horrifying nightmares in British history, a place where a demon disguised as a man had finally been dragged into the light. Dennis Nilsen emerged from the shadows of 1945, born in a remote corner of Scotland, where the cold gnawed not only at the land but also at his very soul. No father. No friends. Only isolation, clinging to him like a sinister shadow. He grew up under the care of his grandfather, the only person who provided him with warmth in a frozen existence. But when his grandfather died, leaving Nilsen just 5 years old, something inside him withered away as well. Detective Peter J. would later recall with a shudder. He told us he had seen his grandfather lying in the coffin, skin pale as death. That image never left him, it embedded itself in his mind, planted like a seed of darkness. From that moment, in Nilsen's mind, love and death became entwined in a macabre dance, waiting for the day they would erupt. Nilsen was a homosexual, but in that era, it was an unspeakable sin. Society viewed men like him as outcasts, so he hid behind an eccentric mask, silently nurturing an unspeakable hunger. On a frigid New Year's Eve in 1979, at the age of 33, Nilsen entered a gay bar, his deep-set eyes scanning the crowd. He chose Stephen Holmes, a 14-year-old runaway, young and naive. That night, inside his home at Melrose Avenue, after hours of drinking and darkness, Nilsen woke up with a monstrous thought: he won't leave. He strangled Holmes with a necktie, listening as the boy's breath broke into silence. Then he sat there, staring at the lifeless body. For an entire week, he lived with the corpse, bathing it, propping it up in a chair like a doll, before finally setting it ablaze in a bonfire in his garden. This was the first shot fired in a spree of madness. But one was not enough. Nilsen returned to the bars, preying on lost young men, runaways, drifters, those society would never miss. He lured them back to Melrose Avenue with soft, deceiving words, only to strangle them in the darkness. The bodies piled up beneath the rotting floorboards, unseen but ever present. 11 men met their fate, dismembered, hidden, or reduced to ashes in thick, smoldering smoke. When there was no more room under the floor, Nilsen moved to Cranley Gardens in 1981, an attic apartment, a new crypt for his insatiable hunger. Here, 3 more victims followed the same gruesome path. But this time, there was no garden to burn them, no floorboards to conceal them. Nilsen butchered the bodies like a butcher preparing meat, stuffing the remains down the drain, leaving behind a stench so unbearable it poisoned the entire neighborhood. Each time he killed, he was cold, unshaken. He kept the corpses close, spoke to them, treated them as eternal companions. Criminologist David Wilson once remarked with chilling clarity, "He didn't kill out of hatred. He killed to keep them, to control them, to make sure no one ever left him again." From the house on Melrose Avenue to the apartment at Cranley Gardens, 15 souls were erased, reduced to fragments in the hands of a man who could never be satisfied. And even as the drains clogged, as the stench of death seeped through the streets, Nilsen remained unfazed, as if the entire world was merely his playground. Until the day the darkness was torn apart. When Dennis Nilsen was dragged into the interrogation room, the stench of death seemed to cling to him. His hands were tightly cuffed, yet his face remained expressionless, his eyes hollow like a bottomless abyss. The detectives braced themselves for a tense battle of wits, but there was none. He confessed to everything, each gruesome detail spilling from his lips with the calmness of a man recounting his daily routine. "I strangled them, cut them up, stuffed them down the drain," he said, without hesitation, without remorse. Detective Peter J. would later shudder at the memory. He told us that if he hadn't been caught, the number could have reached 150. He said it like it was an achievement. 15 lives had been lost, but to Nilsen, it was merely the beginning of an endless nightmare. On November 4, 1983, the courtroom became the stage for a real-life horror show. The evidence was overwhelming: plastic bags filled with body parts, bones beneath the floorboards, his own chilling confessions. And yet, Nilsen stood there, claiming innocence, a faint smirk curling on his lips as if mocking the world. The prosecution desperately searched for survivors, those who had escaped death by mere chance. Carl Stoddard took the stand, his voice trembling as he recounted the night he faced the Reaper in Nilsen's home. "He warned me to be careful with the zipper on the sleeping bag," Carl whispered, "and then I woke up, drowning in the bathtub, water filling my lungs. He was on top of me, pressing down as if tearing the life from my body. But then Nilsen pulled him out, saved him. Not out of mercy. Simply because there was no more space beneath the floorboards." Carl's testimony, along with others who had barely escaped, shattered Nilsen's facade of innocence, exposing a predator who calculated every move, every cut, with chilling precision. The verdict: life in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 25 years. The apartment at Cranley Gardens now lies in ruin, But the stench of death and the whispers of 15 lost souls still linger. Nilsen didn't just kill people. He killed faith in humanity itself. He left behind a stain on British history that will never be erased. And as his lifeless eyes finally closed, one question remained unanswered: did hell have enough room for a monster like him?